It's the Terrible at Fishing radio show on Gold Country Radio. Here's your fishing expert and host, Michael Ruffino.
Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing, everybody. Well, I hope you've had a great week. Now, last week, I talked a lot about topwater fishing and the different manners. Now, kind of ran out of time towards the end, so I really wanted to focus on lily pad fishing this week. And lily pad fishing is one of those types of fishing that, well, you really are surprised by what's inside the lily pads. Lily pad fishing, there's a lot of life hiding inside the lily pads, and you're thinking, well, how do I get a hook without getting snagged on every single cast over into the lily pads? Well, we're going to talk about that. But this right here, we want to imitate sort of what the fish are eating, right? So the fish, they love eating little fish, of course, that are hiding in the lily pads, but also frogs, rats, voles, all sorts of things that will, birds too, believe it or not. The fish, they'll see movement up on top of the lily pads, and then they break surface. And we talked about that last week. And they break surface and they hit them. Now, again, if you go to my Terrible at Fishing YouTube channel, you'll see this video. And behind me right now, I've got a lot of footage of fish hiding in what we call cover. And lily pads offer the best cover. It allows freedom of movement. It allows good cover for the fish. And there's a lot of fish down there. There just is. It's just the trick of enticing them to come up and break surface so you can catch them. And there's tricks to catching fish with what we call soft bodies or frogs. And frogs are, well, it's one of those things that they eat. We're going to talk about, how to get baits to swim in between the lily pads, to swim or to jump on top of the lily pads, and what are the best baits for it. So, let's start with frogs. Now, last week I went into it a little bit on frogs, but my favorite brand of frogs, which has the best hookup rate, which is really important. You're going to find out when you fish with frogs, your hookup rate goes way down, because there are tricks that you're fighting your natural inclinations in order to set the hook better. You're just fighting yourself more than the fish. So this brand's called Toad Thumper. I'll put a link down below on my YouTube channel. Toad Thumper. And Toad Thumper does a couple things very, very different. Toad Thumper takes those upturned hooks and they mold them, the tip into the body itself. Now, typically with a frog, they will stand up above, and then you got to sort of like bend them down, which I do. I do bend them into the body, but the problem about that, sometimes it hooks its own body, and then you just don't get a hookup at all, and that's what ends up happening. Then, with a good soft body, you want it to be soft. So some plastics are thicker and they don't crush as easily as some. And there's a Goldilocks in the making of this rubber. And Toad Thumper seems to have found the Goldilocks. So when the fish bites down, they hook themselves much easier. That's why your hookup rate is better. Also, if that wasn't enough, they don't fill up with water as fast. And there are some, like these spiders, they fill up with water all the time. Every third cast, I'm always squeezing them, and you squeeze them and you squeeze the water out. The problem about them filling up with water is that they sink. And you don't want them to sink. You want them to stay on top of the water. The spiders are really fun. They just don't last very long. They're fun, though. And like I said last week, it's fun to toss them towards, swimmers. Let them freak out. But with the Toad Thumper frogs, these guys, I could go, 15, 20 casts with these without squeezing them. And they have a little, valve on them that when you squeeze them, it'll squirt it out. Any kind of water that they take in. They're actually really, really good at not taking in water. And those are really the three keys to why I like this brand, Toad Thumper. And so, check them out online, see what you think of them. But I do get better hookup ratios with these than I do with other brands like 6 Cents or drawing a blank. I got a lot of them up there. I can't remember all the brands, but you get my head. Now, last week I talked about the two types of frogs. Now there's the popper, and then there's the walker. Okay. I prefer, well, actually, you know what? I don't really lean one way or another. I'll usually start with a popper and then maybe advance to the walker. Now, poppers splash more. They splash more. Walkers are more subtle. And depending on, the disposition of the fish, one's going to work better than the other. And that's what's going to end up happening. Next, when it comes to frogs, you're going to see lots of colors. Lots of colors. Some will look like frogs. Some will look just like a real frog. And you're thinking, wow, isn't that what I should buy? Some will be white. Some will be black with a little bit of like chartreuse on it. So you're thinking, well, which one do I buy? Well, I can tell you from my experience. At least here in our area, no one color is going to be foolproof. But black ones, strangely enough, a black frog works really, really well for me. And it might just be me, I don't know. But black frogs do very, very well. In fact, strangely enough, black baits work very, very well for me. So, typically, and I've taught you guys this on my show before, dark baits for dark water, light baits for light water. What's it like underneath the lily pad area? It's dark, right? The lily pads are shading it, right? So this is actually a dark environment. But when you come out of the lily pads, like at Lake of the Woods, it's nice and clear. So it's weird that you can have dark water next to bright water. Maybe that's why the black baits work better in the lily pads. But one thing about a frog, and this is why I told you that this is the hardest form of fishing, but it's very, very rewarding because of the challenge it puts upon the fisherman. The challenge is fighting your instincts. So what you do is you're going to toss this baby, okay? Toss it over to on top of the lily pads. You're just going to toss it over there as far as you can. They fly pretty far, and they're kind of heavy, relatively speaking. And when you pull it back, you're just going to walk it or pop it, depending on which one you have. And then all of a sudden, a big wake is going to happen, and it's going to push, the fish will push it up out of the water and bite on it. What's your instinct? You got it. Pull really, really hard right when you see the splash, right? What ends up happening? Well, largemouth bass have big mouths. What you're going to do is you're just going to pull it right out of their mouth, and you're not going to catch your fish. I know. Very frustrating, because normally that would work. But with the topwater bait, they've got to bite down on it. So if you try to set the hook, when their mouth is still open, you're just going to pull it right out of their mouth, right? Because they got to bite down and crush the body, and then you can set the hook. So when the fish comes up out of the water, their mouth is open, right? Their mouth won't close until they dive back down into the water. That's when you set the hook. This way, when they're going up, you pull the hook right out. You pull the bait right back out of their mouth. You got to wait. They bite down on the bite, and now you can set the hook. That entire motion typically takes 1 to 2 seconds. I know. You have to fight every instinct in your body to not react to the splash, because what you need is that fish to dive, and at that point they close their mouth. That's when you set the hook. Otherwise, just pop it right back out, and you're thinking, man, you know immediately what you did. You reacted on instinct. You have to delay your set. So when they jump out and hit this, then they dive, and you got to think 1001, 1002, right in that area, 1001, 1002, right? That 1+ second area to set the hook. Sometimes I take a deep breath. So as soon as they come out, I go, and then I set the hook. I take a deep breath as soon as it comes out of the water, and then you can set the hook. That makes this the toughest form of fishing. It really is the hardest form of fishing, because every fisherman sets the hook immediately. And because that's what we do, right? We throw it in the water and we fill it, and then we set the hook. Well, on frog fishing or soft body, you have to take a deep breath, wait 1, maybe 2 seconds, depending how big the jump is, and then set the hook. But you cannot set the hook until the fish starts to go down in the water, dives down. That's when they bite down onto the soft body, and now the hook is exposed. Otherwise, the hook won't be exposed, and it's just going to slip right out of their mouth. So if you're wondering why soft bodies and frog fishing, to be honest, frog fishing is really rewarding because of the life that's underneath those. So, okay, we're going to take a break because we're also recording this for our radio show on Friday nights. I want to thank you guys. Please listen to our sponsors, and we'll be right back. We're going to talk about more about swimming baits in the lily pads and what type of gear we need to have. So we'll be right back.
The Terrible at Fishing Radio Show. Michael's got the secrets and now you know. Can't lie, you cast just fine. Gold Country Radio.
This is Dave. Dave makes the tastiest burritos in town. But
nobody knows I exist. I'm serving culinary masterpieces to my mom and a raccoon named Dennis.
then came Jenny.
Dave, have you tried radio?
Radio, isn't that for traffic reports and late-night alien talk?
It's also for thousands of people who don't know you exist. Yet, radio is affordable, reliable, and it works. Not instant burrito fame, but people start showing up kind of results.
So I partnered with Gold Country Radio, and now people know I exist. I've got new customers, catering calls, and Dennis brought a possum. I think they're dating.
I told you, radio gets your business heard.
Next up, we a second table, maybe indoor seating.
Want to get your business heard? Visit goldcountryradio.org and click Contact to get started. Radio, small budget, big reach, real results.
Out in the backwoods under the stars, I tune in the radio from my old car. Gold Country Radio on Friday night. Terrible at fishing, but it feels just right.
Okay, welcome back to Terrible at Fishing. Well, I'm very happy that you guys found my show. Friday nights here on 103.3, our community channel here in Klamath Falls. You can always find me. But here on also Terrible at Fishing on YouTube is another great place to find me. So, plus you get to see the video. So you get to see it. Now, what gear, we'll take a break from the baits. What gear do you need? Now, this is, lily pad fishing requires what we call a heavy or, extra heavy gear. Or else you're just going to break a rod. Okay? So extra heavy gear can handle a lot of pull. And these fish are big, but also you can pick up a lot of what I call salad. So this particular rod that I have in my hand is made from a company called iRod. Now, normally I use Cajun rods for everything, but they don't make an extra heavy. So my frogging rod, okay, is an iRod. It is the only Chinese-made rod I have. I tried to call and try to get a hold of some American-made companies, but it's really hard to get companies online or on the phone. So this particular rod is a Genesis 2 Junior Swim. Okay. But it is a heavy rod, and it can handle lures up to 4 ounces, which is pretty heavy, and it's 7 foot 8 inch. It's actually a pretty long rod for a frogging rod, but it does very, very well. I love using baitcasters. Now, you can use spinning reels if you want, but I enjoy baitcasters. And you're going to, with your drag, now this is an Abu Garcia Max Pro. I love this, only an $80, it's an $80 reel, but it's a really good reel. I have them on my heavy and my extra heavy rods. And they don't backlash easily, so they do very, very well. And they have a really good drag on them. So these right here, I've put on there a Power Pro line, a braided line. Now, why do I use braid? Because braid does not stretch. Okay, braid line does not stretch, and it's very, very strong. So on this, I've got a 40-pound test braid on here. Just put this down. Trying to, it's a very low ceiling in my basement. So, but a 40-pound test. Now, you do not have to put a leader, okay, on your frogging rod. Now, typically you would put a leader, like a fluorocarbon leader on your line. You don't have to do that when you're doing topwater. You just don't, because the line is not visible to the fish. Everything's on top of the water, right? So I don't find it necessary to put a leader on my topwater, my frogging rods. So this right here is my frogging setup. It works really, really well. The Abu Garcia Max Pro is fantastic, or Pro Max, I don't know. I switched the names on them, and the drag, if you like baitcasters, I have a really good tutorial on Terrible at Fishing on YouTube that will teach you how to use a baitcaster. Also, my book, Terrible at Fishing, which you can get on Amazon, I have a really good section on how to use a baitcaster. Baitcasters can drive you nuts when you first get it because you get a lot of backlashes. But there is a method to learning them that in 30 minutes I can have you casting a baitcaster without backlash. You're always going to get a backlash once in a while. Nobody's foolproof. And I have reels that are $500, and it can backlash, and it does. So it happens. Sometimes you're just not paying attention or something, and you just get it. So that's kind of, you need a heavy rod, really strong line, okay, really good reel. That's what you need to go lily pad fishing. And this time of year, you cannot go wrong with lily pad fishing right now. That's why we're talking about it, because lily pads are very abundant and they're very productive. At Lake of the Woods, you got 3 sets of lily pads pretty much. You got them on the north end, just north of the Boy Scout area. You got it in Rainbow Bay, and the best is the very southern end of the lake. It's just huge, and it's really, really a lot of fun. There are other lakes like Dog Lake. I mean, if you don't mind driving a couple hours, Dog Lake is a beast of a lake for lily pad fishing and big bass. Really, 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 really a good little lake. They do not allow motors, gas motors on the lake. They don't allow it. So if you actually have to, if you have a boat, you can only use a trolling motor. But it's a great kayaking lake, small boat, float tube, anything like that. And it's a great lake, and boy, you will catch some big old nice beautiful bass on Dog Lake. They got a lot of chewy chubs in that lake, so you're going to get a lot of those too. So no big deal. Yeah. They actually talk. They're kind of weird. And then you just toss them back. Kind of weird. But that's, another really, really good lake in order to hit. Thompson Reservoir, not bad. Right along the shoreline there, you can find some nice ones. So now we're going to talk about swimming a bait. Swimming a bait. Now, how do you swim a bait in between lily pads? I mean, you're thinking, okay, well, don't you? That would be really, really hard to do, but it's not. So I actually you guys know I make my own baits. So I pour baits, I paint baits, I do all sorts of things with baits. I like making baits. And so one of the things I pour is basically it's a swim bait. It's a 3-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch, all sorts of sizes of a swim bait with paddle tail. The neat thing about this is that when you get, I use a weighted hook. It's got a weight on the hook itself. And then when you put it through the bait, the tip of the hook, the very tip of the hook, I call it, I skin hook it. So on the back, as this hook comes up out of the bait, I push the tip into the bait itself. It's a soft bait. Now it's completely weedless. I throw this on top of the lily pads, and then there are gaps in the lily pads, right? There's gaps. What this does is that it'll jump on top, sort of flop on top of the lily pads, and then when I get it to a gap, I let it sink, and it's going to swim down. Because it's got a paddle tail. And it's going to swim down in between the lily pads. And then I'll pull it back up, and it's going to swim back up, get on top of the lily pads until I drop it down again. This method of using a soft swim bait with a weighted hook, all right, skin hook it. This method works very, very well also. And you get a higher hookup rate. So, you're fighting your instincts with hollow body, right? Because you gotta wait. But the beautiful thing about it is that they break surface. They push themselves up through the lily pads, and it's like it's an explosion. Don't tell me that ain't fun to watch, because it is fun to watch. With a swim bait skin hooked with a weighted hook, this will go down and they'll bite it. You don't see it. But I'll also tell you too, even though this is very, very effective, they're underwater inside all of that vegetation. And you've got, this is why you have very strong line and a strong rod, because these fish are going to shake and travel. If they wrap themselves around some of that vegetation, it's going to take you a while in order to get that fish out. With a soft body, you have an advantage. They're going to be above the water line, and when they dive, you're going to set the hook, and you're going to try to keep them on top of the lily pads, on top of the water. And you're going to try, and if they dive too fast and they dive too deep, the odds of landing it is minimized, because they can swim around and wrap that line around all that vegetation. Another advantage to braided line. Braided line is sharp, okay? It can cut the vegetation better than mono or fluoro. So plastic lines just don't have the abrasive quality as braided lines. Now I use a 4-braid line by Power Pro. And 4-braid works best for me. You'll see lots of other line out there with 8 braids, 10 braids, 12 braids. And you're thinking more is better, right? No, more is not better. It's just not better. You know why? It's because in order for them to wind 10 or 12 or 8 lines, those are smaller, okay? They have smaller diameters. 4 strands are thicker diameter. So I've just had much better success, especially working in environments like this, with them not breaking. I've had a lot of 10 strands break on me. It drove me nuts. But when I started like researching it and thinking about it, and it's because there's smaller diameters. So each strand is more fragile than a 4-strand because those strands are thicker. I hope that makes sense to you. I know, it's just one of my most successful videos on my YouTube channel is, lines breaking. And it also was the reason that Cast King and I separated. We went our separate ways because I was affiliated with them at one time. They make a lot of fishing line, and a lot of it you can buy over at Sportsman's, but they can't make a good line. They just cannot. They're just terrible lines. And when it came down, push come to shove, I wasn't going to change my story, and when they wanted me to change my story. And it wasn't going to happen because I was losing baits, I was losing catches, I was losing all sorts of stuff on what I thought was a poorly made line. Buying good line is worth it. You gotta buy good line. If you don't buy good line, then you're just going to lose a lot of stuff. So I use fluoro, I use braided, and the Power Pro braided 4-strand, and the color I use is moss green. Now a lot of people, there's lots of colors, and but I use moss green, and that seems to work really, really well for me. But I hope this week we've helped you out on lily pad fishing, and then go to my YouTube channel. I have videos behind me right here, and you can see some underwater footage of what the fish look like in these thick habitats. But anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate it very much, and so does our radio station. So thank you. Tight lines to each and every one of you. Hopefully I'll see you guys out on the water.
That was Terrible at Fishing, the radio show, with fishing expert Michael Ruffino. Check out Terrible at Fishing on YouTube, and tune in next week for the next episode and more great fishing tips. Terrible at Fishing, Fridays at 7 p.m. on Gold Country Radio.